Welcome to the Record Stop. I'm your host for today, Alex Irwin, and I'm here to talk about the wonderful world of vinyl. On our last segment, I talked about the stylus and the cartridge of your turntable. We discussed how these components take the grooves of your vinyl, make vibrations, then generate an electrical signal that represents your sound. Now that we have a signal, what happens to it? It gets sent to the amplifier, but its journey there depends on a number of factors. So we now have a signal made from our cartridge. This signal travels through the tone arm of the turntable, the long component that has the stylus and cartridge attached to the end of it. The wiring in the tone arm then travels into the body of the turntable. This is where the path of the signal starts to change depending on a few characteristics of your setup. The largest factor being whether your turntable has a built-in preamp or not. If your turntable has a built-in preamp, the signal will then just leave the turntable through RCA cables into your amplifier or powered speakers. Easy and simple. If it doesn't, then an external preamp will be required. Now you might be asking, why do I need a preamp? Why can't the signal just go straight to my amp or even my speakers? The answer to that question lies in the difference between a phono and line signal. When your cartridge generates the electrical signal from vibrations, what it's creating is a phono signal. This signal is very, very weak. After all, it's made from miniature parts just moving up and down. The phono signal can be as weak as 0.005 volt for a moving magnet cartridge to 0.0005 volt for a moving coil cartridge. In comparison, once the signal gets transformed into a line signal, it now sits at 0.316 volt. As you can see, a line signal is hundreds of times more powerful than a phono signal. The purpose of the preamp is to make this boost. Think of it as a speed boost in a racing game. It gives it more power to be able to be picked up in the amplifier. Besides just the increased voltage, there are some aural characteristics that differ between a phono signal and a line signal. There are two primary differences between sound from a phono signal and a line signal. The first is, of course, the signal level. The increased volts makes the signal more powerful and thus is louder when played through loudspeakers. The second difference is a bit more complex. It has something to do with a process called RIAA equalization. When a record is carved, the low frequencies, the bass, are reduced and the high frequencies, the treble, are emphasized. This is present on the grooves of the record itself. When it is played on a home stereo, however, the opposite happens. The bass is emphasized and the treble is reduced. The net result of this is a flat frequency response. The phono preamp facilitates this flat frequency response. This entire process is called RIAA equalization. The reason this is so is because lower frequencies have wider grooves, so to save space on the record, they emphasize the high frequencies while reducing the lower ones. When your signal stays phono and gets played, it is often quiet, low on bass, and extremely squeaky, as you can listen to in this recording. However, when your signal gets converted to line, you hear it as it's intended. Listen to the difference. This is why we convert our signals from phono to line. It is a small step in the whole process of going from groove to loudspeaker. If your turntable doesn't have a built-in preamp and outputs a phono signal, then those RCA cables will enter a preamp, then leave to go into your amplifier. An easy way to determine if you need an external preamp is to look at the back of your turntable. If there is a small switch that is labeled phono line, then you have a built-in preamp and don't need an external one. Just make sure that switch is flicked to line. If you don't see these options, you most likely need an external preamp. And that is how your signals go from the cartridge all the way into your amplifier. The difference between phono and line makes all the difference. On the next segment, I will teach you what the amplifier is, what it does, and what you can do with it to change the characteristics of your sound. See you at the next stop.